Hi, evening everyone. So today we're going to just do a quick revision session, and our topic is going to be 5 functional fitness tests that you can use for people that are over 60 to 65. So if you've done like the older adult course, or if you've done like GP referral, so the learners that are on our course today, we were actually talking about this topic because it's so important to make sure that we think of ways to functionally assess people that we're going to train. So if you've done either of those 2 courses, then this will be a recap to make sure that you remember what they are, and hopefully you're applying them as well. If you haven't, then maybe it'll be an insight into tests that you didn't know were actually standardised and had data related to them in the industry. So let's talk about 5 functional tests. There are many more, but let's just zone in on those. So the first one, if we get started with, is the sit to stand test, or the chair stand test as it's otherwise phrased, which is nice and simple, and it measures lower body muscular strength and endurance. So it's as simple as it sounds. People sit on a chair. Ideally, they cross their arms over their chest, and then you ask them to stand up and sit down as many times as they possibly can in 30 seconds. And in that time period, of course, you're going to count how many they do, and they're going to focus on their technique, making sure that they do actually just touch the chair each time, because a lot of people want to be sneaky and they just want to sort of bop over above the chair, so they're not actually touching it, so it's not a full sit to stand. So make sure that you focus on technique so that it's the same for every person that you do. Now, when they've done their 30 seconds, you would then compare their score with the data for their age and for their gender. So what I'll do is I'll put a link above, once I've done this live, to some standardised training. So you can see for your age, if you're over 60, and you choose your gender, of course, and find out where you actually come. So are you in the average fitness range for someone of your age to do sit to stands, to measure the strength in your lower body? Hi, Jackie. Okay, so once you've done that with a healthy person, you can see how the protocol works. But if you've got someone that might have a walking stick, or someone that uses a frame, for example, then you need to adapt it, of course. So anyone can complete this test, and they'll do it at their own pace, but you'll just need to note that they're using additional support. So if they're using a frame in front of them, then write that on the sheet too. If the person needs to push up from the chair in order to stand from it, then make a note. And it's so important that you do this, because if 12 weeks down the line, they're managing to do some sit to stands with the support of their frame or the chair, but the number that they're achieving in 30 seconds is lower, then that's still improvement, isn't it? Because they're developing their own functional strength in their lower body. But if you don't document that, you can't compare that. Just bear with me a second, I've got something on my screen. Excellent. Okay, so that's the first one, which is chair, sit to stands. The second one that we'll talk about is the 6-minute walk test. So again, fairly easy to do with most people, as long as you've got a big enough space. So the aim of the test needs to be sort of 50 yards of a rectangle, so a 50-yard rectangle, or I think that's 45 metres. Or adapted, I run mine, because I've got a smaller room, I just do a 10-metre distance from cone to cone. And you get people to walk for 6 minutes, and you document how far they walk. So if you've got the rectangle, then you'll get them walking around the outside of the rectangle as many times as they can, documenting the number of lengths, and then stopping them within a metre, the closest metre to that part of the lap at the end. If you're doing the 10-metre one like I do, so walking from cone to cone, then you just count the number of lengths that they do, and then obviously that will give you an overall distance. So again, put it into the data table for their age and for their gender to find out how they are. Are they scoring an average for their age range? Are they below? Are they above? Because without knowing this data, we can't obviously set goals for them. We can't target the specific area of fitness that we need to work with them on. So it is really important. Now, again, for anyone that's a bit frailer and maybe they can't do continuous walking, maybe they have poor balance or poor mobility, then they can actually do a separate test called the 2-minute step in place test. And quite simply described, they would stand next to a wall, and you would identify the midway to their thigh, so the distance between their knee to their hip, you'd find halfway, and mark that on the wall. The aim is to then march, lifting your knees up to that height that you've just marked on the wall for 2 minutes, and see how many steps you do. But only counting the one leg. So if I'm stepping in place going right, left, I only ever count all of the right leg movements, okay? So you're actually just counting one for every 2 steps that you've done. And again, compare it to the data. And that's a bit easier to do if you're in a smaller venue or if you're training people in their homes, because then you don't have to measure out such a large distance. So there's always ways around it. So that's muscular strength and endurance with the sit to stand so far, and aerobic endurance with the 6-minute walk test. Then we've got ones that can test flexibility. So for flexibility, we want to try and develop upper body and lower body flexibility. Upper body being our shoulders predominantly, so we get people to do the shoulder flexibility test, which is as simple as getting them to put their arm up in the air and then place the hand between their shoulder blades and see how far down the back they can reach. There's a couple of different versions when it comes to data. One of them just tries to find an anatomical area that they can reach to. For example, they can reach the back of their head, or they can reach their neck, or they can get down to their shoulder blade area. Or another one is where you'll put the other hand around your back, so you're comparing, you're trying to combine your hands and see if they reach. Now I find that one's a bit more statistically significant in terms of the improvements for people. So if someone was doing that, then what you'd get them to do is, again, put their arm up in the air, put it behind, and the same, bring the other arm behind, and you're trying to basically see whether their 2 middle fingers meet. So if they meet together, then they would score 0, but if they were like the distance apart, you would use a ruler and see how many centimeters gap there is, and you would document that as like -6 centimeters, for example. But if they were overlapping their middle fingers, then you would measure the distance of overlap. So again, maybe +3 centimeters, for example. And I love that version because even if someone improves by 1 centimetre, which maybe visually, if you weren't taking data so specifically, wouldn't really look like an improvement, and they would think maybe they aren't getting any better. But if you've taken that and you can say, look, you've improved by 1 centimetre in your shoulder flexibility, we need to keep doing what we're doing, then hopefully that will motivate them to keep going with their programme and do whatever it is that they're being asked to do, or the homework that they might have for stretching or whatever it might be. So that's upper body. Lower body wise, we do the hamstring flexibility test. Now I'm terrible at this, like I score worse than a 90-year-old, to be honest. But the aim for this one is that you're sitting on the front of a chair and you straighten one leg out in front of you. We need to overlap our hands, so our middle fingers, as you can see there, are overlapped, and we're then going to slide down our shin as far as we can reach. And by overlapping our hands, it means we keep our shoulders square rather than sort of like reaching down like this and twisting at the back. So from the hips, keep a straight back, and then you're going to lean down towards your toe. And just like before, with a ruler, you will measure from the tip of the finger to the shoe if there's a gap, and that will be minus however many centimetres. If they reach their shoe, then that will be 0, and if they get past their shoe, then that will be plus however many centimetres they've achieved there. In my referral classes, I tell you, nearly every single over 60s is much better than me, so I think I might have to practice a bit more. But some of them are so flexible that they can get way past their toes in a seated position, and others obviously find it hard, so that's where we focus on developing their hamstring flexibility as well. So it's really interesting to see what people's scores are and how they really do rate in relation to their age and their gender. And they love it too. It's a bit of friendly competition, both with themselves and with others in the room. So that's 3. So we've got 2 more to do. The next one is the bicep curl test. And that's obviously measuring our upper body strength and endurance. And this time we need to use either a 5-pound or an 8-pound weight. So quite heavy. So if we say it's a 5-pound dumbbell, then we're going to get someone to sit down and we're measuring how many bicep curls they do in 30 seconds. So again, just getting people to pace themselves. It can be done standing, it can be done seated, but whichever way you decide to do it with your clients, just make sure you standardise it so you have it for records. So the next time you do the test with them, then you'll be using the same protocol and hopefully making it fairer so that you get accurate results all the time. So that one's nice and simple. Most people can do that one. And I mean, if someone couldn't for any reason do bicep curls, then you could choose any other upper body exercise and test them for a certain period of time. You just won't have the functional data to compare them to for their age and gender, because that's the main one that we use in the industry. It's the main one that the literature and the science has been focusing on. But that doesn't mean that you only have to use those. So just think about it. I mean, sometimes I do as just a bit of a fun activity. How many wall press-ups can people do in a certain period of time? And then we just tally them off and we have like a prize for the winner. It's just something we do periodically, but it gives motivation. And if they improve their score, then they're still seeing improvements, and it's not so important that they have to have statistical data to relate it to. So just something to think about there. Okay, so we've covered sit to stand, 6-minute walk test, bicep curl. So next we're looking at agility. So the agility functional test is called the 8. You need a chair for this, and a cone and a stopwatch. So you're going to get someone to sit down on their chair, at the front of their chair, and the aim is to measure 8 foot from the back foot of the chair forwards. Then you'll put a cone there at that 8 foot marker, sorry. They'll cross their arms over their chest if they're able to. Sorry, I just smacked my microphone, you probably heard. They're going to get up really quickly, as quickly as they can, and they're going to march to the cone, walk around the outside of the cone and back down, and you're going to time how many seconds it takes them to do that. So for people that maybe are on blood pressure medication, as we were discussing today in our course, or people that just feel a bit dizzy at times, or they're frail and could potentially fall, this is not the test for them. But for people that are able-bodied and want to do this test, it is a case of how quickly can you stand up and briskly walk around that cone and get back to your chair. So give people a sort of trial go at it before you actually document their main score, because it takes a little bit of getting used to, and you shouting go at them is a little startling as well. So just take your time with that particular test. Obviously, the shorter amount of time is better. And again, you can find statistical data for age and gender based on that test as well. If someone is frailer and they use a frame or a walking stick, as we said, then again, document that there, because if later down the line, they're performing the same test and getting a little bit longer, but they're no longer using a walking aid of any description, then that's still a bonus, and they don't just want to see that their numbers are getting worse, do they? You need to remind them of how far they've come. But also make sure people don't cheat, because, I don't know, people like to cheat. They like to get a little bit of a jog on rather than a walk. So it is a brisk walk that they should be doing. So just make sure that you keep them tests performed properly, because older people can be cheeky sometimes in class. They've got a lot of banter going on and they love a little test to see how good they are. But I do find people like to run on this one, so I have to stop them. So that's sit to stand, 6-minute walk test, hamstring and shoulder flexibility as one, 8 foot up and go, and we did the bicep curl test. So that is all of our 5. There are many others. I also do balance ones and other strength related ones and other endurance ones. So, I mean, I don't want to bombard you with them all today, because it's just a quick recap and revision session on these ones, and I've been talking about these all day long. So let's see whether any of you perform these tests on a regular basis. So if you do use these in your sessions or in your one-to-ones, then maybe comment below and let us know. Maybe see, whether you have a favourite one. Do you use one more than the other? So for myself, the 6-minute walk test is my main go-to functional test. I use it every 6 to 8 weeks with my classes, because I can get 3 or 4 people doing it at the same time, so it's time efficient. They have their book of records, so they can see what they did the last time, and then they can try and beat it from there. So that's my go-to one. And then after that, it's definitely the sit to stand test. So they're the ones we use regularly. Other people use different ones because they've got different space and different setup. It's just great. But just remember, really, as fitness professionals, whether you're working with the older population or a younger population, it doesn't matter who you're working with. You have to collect functional data, because if you don't collect anything baseline, you can never show someone how they're progressing. You yourself can't determine how well your programs are and how successful they are if you can't track things. So even the simplest of functional tests are important, and I really recommend you adding them into your sessions if you don't currently have them. Okay, so that's our recap for today. Like I say, comment below in terms of whether you actually use any of these currently, and if so, what your favourite one is. If you don't, then maybe let us know which one you're going to try and come back and let us know how it goes as well when you actually do it. So that's that for today. I hope you found that helpful. Next week we'll do a different revision topic. If you have any topics in mind, anything that you would like to recap on, refresh on, then again let me know so that I can make sure that we get them scheduled into our weekly Facebook Lives. All right, I hope you have a good weekend and enjoy your bank holiday weekend as well. I'll speak to you next week. Bye.